2023 so far has been kind of slow when it comes to new games. Resident Evil 4 was recently released, but this time last year, I believe Dying Light 2 had already came out, Horizon Forbidden West was already out, Elden Ring had released. 3 big games. The only new game that released thus far is Hogwarts Legacy. Resident Evil 4 Remake, yes, it's a new game, but it's nothing new that you could not have already experienced, considering you can play Resident Evil 4 on last gen consoles if you wanted to. But by far the biggest indie release so far is Tchia. With that being said, this isn't going to be a standard review. I'm not going to have breaks in between the video. This is more like if I was reporting on a news story or something. I'm just going to tell you what I thought about the game. The first thing I want to talk about is the open world itself. It is an open world game, but it's not very fleshed out. If I'm being honest with you, it feels like a Vice City, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Grand Theft Auto 3 size with the map, minus all of the roads and stuff. Because the open world, a lot of times it does look good. When you go to the green style environments with grass and trees, the environments look really great. But then in certain areas, when you get into the city, it really looks like you could be playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City on the PS2 with how the buildings are done. A lot of the cars move very clunky, to say the least. But if I'm remembering right, this is this studio's second game. I think their first game was maybe a side scroller. Maybe it's their first game. I'm not entirely sure. The fact is that I'm pretty sure this studio has like 13 people in it. I remember reading that on a comment. Don't quote me on it, but that's what I read. So when you think about that and the size of the studio, just being able to make an open world game in and of itself, I would say is a pretty big accomplishment. One of the things that helps with the open world is that once you start unlocking things and you can soul steal into things, and then you can fly around, you can jump with a fish out of water, you can swim with a dolphin. The traversal in this game, it's really unique. When you're traversing the environments, it's never really bland unless you don't have any soul energy to actually use. It does recharge by itself. I was disappointed at the end of the game when you didn't have infinite of that. I don't know why you wouldn't have infinite for 100%ing the game, but that's just a nitpick on my end. Once you look past the open world though, and you realize that it's a pretty interesting world given the size of the game, given the size of the studio, taking everything into consideration. And once you're like, oh, I understand that it looks like this and for the size that it is. But part of the problem with the open world is the frame rate. At the time of me recording this, it was announced that there would be a 60 FPS patch on maybe PC, PS5. I didn't play it on PC, so I don't know if it's 60 frames by default or it's 30 on PC. I do have a PS5 currently, so I could have played it on PS5, but I chose to play it on PS4 because I want to experience what the worst console would be experiencing. Because when you want to review something, you don't want to say the best things about what it could potentially be. You want to experience the worst thing to know that this is the problems that this game has. And from what I'm hearing, there's frame issues on PS5 too, but I can assure you that there are definitely frame rate issues on the PS4, considering that's what I played it on. And part of the open world, I feel like that's the reason that it has frame rate issues. You go into some areas, there are so many trees. I mean, there are so many. And you ask yourself, why does this area need this many trees? You could have a lot of trees, but they could be more spaced out and it wouldn't feel as claustrophobic as this game does in certain areas. That was honestly one of my problems with the game. Some of the times the frame rates would just get so bad that you would honestly think that this game is about to crash and I'm going to have to restart. So many times that was about to happen. Luckily, I only had, I think, one crash related to just open world things. Unfortunately though, since we're on the topic talking about crashes, I had several game breaking crashes. I could not watch 2 cutscenes. 2 of the cutscenes were very, very important to the story, and those 2 I had to skip. I feel like it's something to do with going into the air right after you leave the first island and you have to collect some things without giving spoilers. You leave the very first island, go to the second island, and then some receptionist is like, collect these materials, and once you collect them, you then return to her, and then you go into the sky to have a meeting, to give you as little spoilers as possible. When you're in the sky, you take a few steps and the game crashed. I tried loading it 3 times and it crashed. There was another instance about probably 80% towards the game, which was a huge cutscene, and it was very, very, very important to the story, and it crashed one time. Luckily, just loading it up one time fixed that cutscene, so I was able to watch it, although the frame rate issues were still there and you were sitting on the edge wondering if it was going to crash. Finally, at the very end of the game, which would be the end story pre-epilogue cutscene, it crashed again in the sky. But I didn't get to see the ending of the game, and as of this review, I'm still yet to watch it on YouTube. I probably will get around to it eventually. Maybe I'll do it on PS5, because I will play it on PS5, but I'm not replaying it now because I don't own the game. But that's 3 story-related cutscenes that I had to not watch simply because the game wanted to crash on me. Overall though, if you're wondering what kind of game this is, I would call it a mini puzzle. It's not puzzle really. There are certain things with like totems to where you can craft them, and it's sort of a puzzle, but the spoiler for the puzzle is also right there in front of you. So it's not really, but it's very mini game centric. You can do races with just running, races when you're in an animal. You can do rock building, which given that you're using the controller, you want to craft some very, very convoluted rocks, but you don't really have 2 hands, so you can't really stack things that would be very unique. There are a lot of collectibles that you can collect. That's standard for an open world game, and generally that's your experience of the game, collecting things. There's a claw machine in the game too. You can play that. This game isn't really a standard game. This game was made kind of as like a tech demo of sorts, but not really a tech demo, more of a studio demo to show what we can do as a studio. The story is there, and the story is pretty, I would say it's pretty good. It's nothing that's gonna win Game of the Year, obviously, but overall I enjoyed it. A lot of times when I was playing this game, I generally enjoyed what this game had to offer. Sure, some of the things became tedious. The races were great. It's a very, very just sit down and chill race. Some of the races you had to be almost super precise on, and then some of the races, it really seemed like they gave you a lot more time than you needed. On some, it seems like I barely did them by a second or 2, and other times I could literally make some Kool-Aid, sit in a beach chair, get a tan, and to make a long story short, beat it by 15 seconds on the timer. But honestly, I'm not complaining. I love games like that, to where you don't really have to sit on the edge of your seat wondering if you're going to beat the race or not. The game overall, because I don't really want to make this super long, it has its ups and downs. It's a fun game. The games within it, the mini game centric style of this game is fun. And to be honest, I wish more games would do games like this. It's just one of those to where you pick it up, you go have some fun with it, play a guitar, you can even control the weather with your guitar, you can spawn animals, you can go on treasure hunt. There's a little bit of everything for you to do in this game. And overall, I enjoyed my experience with it. But the frame rate, I just can't get over the frame rate. The cutscenes crashing, it really brought down this game a lot for me. You're going to enjoy it if you're playing it, but at the same time, be prepared for crashes and cutscenes and frame rate issues that will kind of annoy you when you're doing races. Never mind when you're in combat, you're trying to find the last enemy to burn in a camp or whatever. The game did a lot of good things right, but at the end of the day, it did a lot of things wrong too. With that being said though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You can knock this off of my list of Game of the Year, Indie Game of the Year. because this will not be my indie game of the year just based off of the technical aspect alone. I would give this a solid 6 out of 10. It was overall fun. The technical aspects just ruined it for me. I enjoyed the mini games. I enjoyed the environments. I enjoyed being able to soul steal into birds and just flying around, although that's when the frame rates dip. Parts like that, it's like, hey, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, right? It's unique and it's cool that you can do this, but it comes at a cost, and that cost is your frames. But I will talk to you guys later. Hope you enjoyed this video. And would I recommend this game to someone? I would say yes. You can look past the frame rate issues. You can look past the crashing cutscenes. But overall, at its core, I think it is a pretty decent game.